Hi everyone, the time has come to do the full review of the Tisell 147 dress watch, and I've had the watch for a couple of months now, maybe even less, but I think I've gathered enough information in order to give you the full details here for this watch. But before I go ahead, let me just give you a little bit of background about Tisell. So Tisell is a South Korean micro brand with fairly low volume from what I can see, judging on their website. The watch discussed today is not a new model, however it was unavailable for probably 2 or even 3 years, and now at the time of this video is currently back on stock. So I literally had to wait for about 2 or 3 years in order to purchase this model, so it feels kind of special. What do we have? We have a very classically looking watch with Roman numeral dial, thermally blued brigade type of hands with porcelain dial. And the watch also sports a hand-wound Chinese movement with no date. And here you can take a glance on the Chinese movement. And as it's single complication, it features a sub-second dial at 6 o'clock, as you can see. Before we go ahead with the other details, let us clear the dimensions first. So this is a 43 millimeter case. It's rather large for a dress watch, but as you might have known already, my wrist is 7 3/4 to 8 inches depending on the weather, so this actually feels just right for me. So this 43 millimeter is excluding the enlarged crown. Lug to lug space we have 51 millimeters. Thankfully we have a 22 millimeter strap, not 21 as is normally the case. And the thickness, because of the manual wound movement and the lack of rotor, we have only 10.5 inches of thickness. As you can see, the curves are actually sloping down, so it actually fits smaller wrists as well just fine. And now when we have the dimensions out of the way, we can move on to the main event here, which is the dial. What we have on the dial is Roman numerals, as you can see, in the cleanest possible form. They're done in a very aesthetically pleasing way, as you can see, and the numbers have been printed on the porcelain dial with very nice quality actually, and very nice font. Also what we have is the sub dial for the sub-seconds, as you can see, which is using Arabics. The sub dial is slightly recessed. I may be able to show it later on when I get a little bit of better lighting. And what else do we have? We have the Tisell logo with a beautifully scripted hand winding script just underneath the logo. As you can see, it's actually being done with such curvature that if you're looking at the watch from distance, you're not probably able to tell what it says, but on the other hand it looks quite sophisticated and elaborated, so I actually like this wording underneath the logo. One thing that I should mention also is the way that they designed the numeral at 4 o'clock here. Some people don't like it because this is not the actual way of writing down or printing the fourth number into the Roman numeric system. but this approach can be seen on many other brands as well, Breguet including. So the reason for this is more aesthetical than any other. So if they have the proper writing, then aesthetically it doesn't look so well, and it kind of becomes very similar to this one here. So what they've done is they've adopted the common style of writing the fourth numeral. I have no problem with it whatsoever. Moving to the hands, what we have here is rather nicely looking Breguet hand for the hours, a little bit elongated hand for the minutes. These are thermally blued hands. The way to actually do them is to heat them to a particular temperature, and it's very difficult to do this because if you heat them too much, then they become black. If you heat them for a long time, again you lose the color. So this is actually a very difficult process of creating those hands, and it's actually quite amazing that Tisell were able to provide it for the price range. In the video you might not be able to see them as blue, but in reality they're a very dark shade of blue, which is extremely nice. Depending on the weather, you might the weather and the lighting condition, you might see them as black as well. And I cannot miss the my best detail on this watch, my favorite detail, which is the second hand. It's so slender and delicate that it's hard to believe actually. In reality, this thing is so slender, so I really like it. And as you can see, it runs around this rail track subdial with Arabic numerals, and the subdial is recessed, as I mentioned. And right now, I'm not sure if you're able to pick it up, but there are eccentric details on the subdial, which are also very nice. Dial wise, I've inspected the dial under a loop, so I would say it's being done amazingly. I was able to notice only one minor imperfection into the eccentric details here on the subdial, but it's so minor that it cannot be seen with a plain eye, or maybe somebody has to look there for a long time before it can actually be seen. And what I would say is that the dial quality is actually better in comparison to my Hamilton, because when I inspect my Hamilton, I'm able to see a lot more imperfections, and the Hamilton is like 4 times the price of this Tisell. So I'm really surprised to actually see this kind of quality in a watch that is around 150 USD mark. Generally a very beautiful watch. Let's discuss all the other observations that I have. So not much else to say to the dial. It's a very clean looking, very nicely done porcelain dial, and it gives a very classical vibe if you want. So moving to the crown is just big enough. As expected, the crowns on a manually wound movements are a bit bigger because you will be using them almost every day. So the crown is really comfortable. I have no issues using the crown. And when we speak about the case, we have brushed sides, polished bezel, polished lug tops, and if we turn the watch, we see that the bezel of the back cover is also polished. Quality wise, again, I'm very impressed. I mean, it's on par with my Hamilton in terms of in terms of surface quality. I have absolutely no problem with the quality of this case. It's really a nicely done case. Nothing elaborated, but it's exactly what I want for a watch like this. A simple dress watch with a simple dial, and the beauty of this watch is actually is in its simplicity and its porcelain dial. Yeah, because this is something that is I think rarely seen. The Breguet hands, so beautiful. The sub dial is perfect. And one thing that you should know is that having no date is actually a convenience feature, because you don't have to set the date every time, and especially if you're not wearing the watch that often to keep it wound, it you don't have to think about it. It just you just set the time and you're ready to go. Whereas if you have a date, you need to think if this is the AM or PM rotation, and then you need to be careful at what time you're setting the date, because if it is after 9 PM, then you might damage the mechanism, so you need to make sure you're in the correct timing for setting the date, etc. So in this regard, having a no date watch is much easier. Do I miss the date? Yes, when I'm wearing this, I would find myself trying to find a date 2 or 3 times a day, because most of my watches have date, but it's not really some serious issue. Okay, so case-wise, perfect. Dial-wise, exceptional for this price range. Let's talk about the movement. Movement is a Chinese hand-wound movement. It's from a manufacturer that I cannot even pronounce, so that's why I'm not even going to try, because I'm sure I'm going to butcher it. But what you can see here is a very decent level of decoration. So we do see blued screws. I'm not sure if these are thermally blued or chemically blued, doesn't really matter. For this price range, is actually amazing. One thing I should mention about the movement is that previous model featured a different movement, and I managed to find a couple of videos online on YouTube of the previous model that was having the movement they used to have back in the day. And I would say that the current movement is a downgrade in terms of decoration, because if you actually see the previous movement, is absolutely gorgeous. This one is also pretty good, don't get me wrong. I have no problems with this movement and the decoration of it, but the previous one was even better. So that was probably one of my slight disappointments when I got the watch. This is not to say that the previous movement being more beautiful is a better movement. I have no idea in terms of technical specification which one was better, this one or the previous one. I would assume they were quite similar, or they are quite similar in this regard. Another observation about a movement is the power reserve. So the power reserve is listed, if I'm not mistaken, as 48 hours. Let me just wipe this watch. 48 hours fully wound. So the one issue that you have with hand wind watches is that whenever you are winding them, you don't know when to stop. Yeah, so either go for full until you cannot wind anymore, or you just kind of think that, okay, that's enough probably, because I've wound it probably 30 times or something like this. So having no power reserve in this case is really a little bit problematic. First time I wound it, it went running for about 20 hours and it stopped. So I was a little worried, because after 20 winds it becomes really difficult to actually wind it. What happens next is I decided to push it a little bit harder. so I managed to get about 40 winds until the crown was no longer able to rotate, which I think is probably a little bit of overwinding. And in this mode I was able to get 36 hours. Yeah, so I'm far from the advertised 48 hours for this movement, but actually 36 is quite enough, because what I need from this watch is to be able to have good 24 hours of power reserve. So I wind it either each morning or each evening, depending on my schedule. So I have no problems with the 36 hours for this movement. Accuracy wise, it really depends on the power that it has. I found it to be most accurate in between 10 and 25 hour range from the power reserve. If I wind it till the end, it will become fast. Towards the bottom of the power reserve, it will lose quite a bit of time, but not really an issue for me. As I told you, this watch is something that I need or wear occasionally, so it's not something that will bother me. I have absolutely no problem with it. A few words about the strap. There is an option for a brown one or a black one. All my other straps are brown, so I decided to go for a black one. And the strap was also another pleasant surprise. You could see that the strap is branded. It's not the most convenient strap, in a way that it's a bit stiff, but in terms of looks is, I would say, near perfect. I have absolutely no problem with the looks of this strap. The details are quite good on it. Obviously it imitates a crocodile or something else, but yeah, if you look at the reverse end, you could see the genuine leather sign, which is normally not the highest of quality. It's a little bit short, as you can see. I'm using this pin here, so there are 2 more holes and then the strap ends. So if you're having a larger wrist, it may not fit to you. If you're having 8.5 inches, for example, then you might want to consider another strap for it. But for the price range, it's actually pretty good, because the watches that I've seen in this price range usually come with awful straps. Buckle wise, very plain buckle. There is no anything signed on the buckle, no logo or anything, but it really does the job. And what else can I tell you about the watch, except that it's giving me a great joy to use it. Let's explore some of the details on the movement. So here on the upper end, what we can see is a Tisell watch number 9312, and we also have 17 jewel sign, and we have the regulation mechanism here. Something that I want to show you about the regulation mechanism is this is something that I noticed actually just recently. If you look at the arrow for the regulator, it's been moved in the far left, if you want, or far, in this case, far right position, which is in the far negative scale, which means that this watch probably wasn't keeping very good time by the time it was assembled. But it also means that they had some sort of a quality control that tried to regulate the watch as much as possible. And again, I have no issues with it. Yeah, in this package you're getting a really great looking case. You're getting exceptional dial quality. So this cheap price should come from somewhere, and in this case it's coming from the Chinese movement. So it's not something that you should expect miracles from, but probably keep in mind that it will be fairly easy to fix and or even replace. So this shouldn't be a big issue. So these are my thoughts about the Tisell. These are my observations so far. I really like the watch. I think it's been a great addition to my collection because I really don't need a dress watch on a daily basis. Normally I wear my sports watches, but once in a while I would need something a bit more elegant, and I find this Tisell to be serving this purpose very well. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I'm also going to attach the video for the unboxing of this watch, and should you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask me. Don't forget to subscribe for my channel, and I'll see you in the next video as well. Bye.